schools and adults and punishment, people don't behave. When given free reign, especially children that are used to having such tight controls and they're from upper class society, they're going to do whatever, right? Because that's part of the argument. It's like you have the good kids are trying to create a system of control of voting and responsibilities, etc. And the very little kids just want to play, and the older kids just want to hunt and do whatever, right? And I think the book stops short of sexual assault or rape, doesn't go that far, but almost everything else that you can imagine, cannibalism, murder, torture, it happens. It's like, wow. And that's what I learned in school, kids. So yeah, the channel should be up right now. We should already be streaming. So that should be that should be going on. So in a couple of minutes,
there we go.
And now now that we're up, I'm going to do the announcements on the social medias, wherever I announce myself, and we should be in shortly. So if anybody joins us in the chat like they did last time, hope they have a good time.
Oh, wow. The first Mass Effect was released in 2007. It's been 10 years.
10 years, yeah.
10 years, damn.
It's been a while. So let us kick off. We're a couple of minutes early, but I think we can start. Hi to anyone who is watching. I know the chat is a bit quiet right now, but that's fine. We are here live. My name is Rafael Pinheiro, also known as Lessons Learned on Twitch and on YouTube. And I have our friend here, Chapelmon, at the Lessons Learned podcast. We switched software, which means you can see more of my ugly face. Congratulations. And we're using Zoom. And we're going to be talking about Mass Effect. Why we were going to talk about Mass Effect, I usually don't like to use this phrase, but since we're both fans of the series, and we made a couple of videos about them over the years, we decided that this would be a good subject for tonight's show. Hopefully we'll run about 1 hour, so it'll be from 9 to 10 at Eastern Time, and you are welcome to join us on the chat at any moment. So, first a little bit of history. We just were talking before we started the program, or you probably heard it in the prep. Sorry, I blanked out. Mass Effect is about 10 years old. It came out in 2007 for the Xbox 360 and PC, and this year, at 10 years after, Mass Effect Andromeda, the latest iteration of the game, came out to less than critical acclaim, even though originally the series was very popular with its critic and a dedicated fan base. So, first question is, what happened?
Well, I think the general consensus would probably be EA, but I wouldn't really put all the blame on them, because as BioWare has stated before, EA just gives them enough rope to hang themselves.
Yeah, well, I think it's very interesting, the history of both BioWare and Electronic Arts as they came together, because when Mass Effect came out, BioWare was moving away from doing other people's games. They were not doing IP, they were not doing Wizard of the Coast and doing Dungeons and Dragons games. They were not doing Star Wars games on KOTOR. Basically, everything they'd done from Baldur's Gate up to that point had been related to Wizard of the Coast or TSR or LucasArts and so forth. They did do Jet Empire, which was an not the first IP the first game they done outside of on their own, because the first game was a mecha game. I forget the title of the game, but that was one of the first games, and it was their own game, kind of a battle tech ish type game. But really, when Mass Effect and Dragon Age, they were moving to do their own thing. In fact, a lot of people compare Mass Effect originally to sort of their own version of KOTOR. So
it was Neverwinter Nights. That wasn't their own property. Was that also Wizard of the Coast?
Yeah, that was also Wizard of the Coast, because Neverwinter Nights, it's in the Forgotten Realms, and it's D&D 3rd edition. So it's kind of continuation in a way of what stuff that we're doing Baldur's Gate and Baldur's Gate 2. Different system, of course, but still, there was that.
I think that was probably the first game I noticed was made by BioWare. A friend picked up the platinum version of Neverwinter Nights. I remember being very into it, but then I stopped halfway because I got busy and I think I lost my save and I just never picked it up again.
I played it quite a bit. I mean, I played it in multiple machines because of the the system that it has. Basically, you can create your own modules. And so, once I finished it the first time around, I said, okay, I want to play it again. I'm going to make my own, setting, load it up with ridiculous powerful weapons and armor, and load a character, and then go to town with those abilities and replay it again. And there's a bunch of mods. It's still being somewhat supported by a community that releases once in a while stuff, but in the what's called the Neverwinter Nights Vault. But most of the support has gone to Neverwinter Nights 2, and even then, it's been a while, right? I think Wizard of the Coast tried to do another game. I forgot what it was. Sword Coast Adventures, I think, which kind of tried to capture the Neverwinter Nights feel, but as far as I know, it just didn't do that. So it's a missed opportunity. I think most people moved to stuff like Skyrim, which is more moddable and now being released on your local toaster. So yes.
Yeah, that's a good way of putting it.
Yeah. It's on Twitch, on iOS, on toasters, your fridge, maybe be part of your sat nav or GPS as well, Yeah, it's like...
But pretty soon they're gonna make a Skyrim the real life edition.
You walk around with a little compass over your head, go like, and hear the music in the background. It's like, oh, dragons, great. Well, they're doing also a virtual reality version of it, as well as also Fallout 4 is going to be in VR. I don't know if that's ever going to amount to anything, but we'll see. So at 2007, Mass Effect comes out, and I think one of the things that was very interesting was the promise that BioWare made, not EA, BioWare, that this was supposed to be a grand trilogy, kind of like Star Wars, a beginning, middle, and end. It was going to be, space opera, the comeback of space opera, great stories. It's BioWare was known for their good writing. It also was one of the few games that originally had a fully voiced main character. I think that's also important.
Especially, it did innovate pretty much dialogue systems as we know it today, because it was the first introduction of the dialogue wheel.
And also wasn't the only game or the first game to have this, but one of those games that popularized a morality system.
I'm not entirely sure about that. Maybe morality systems in terms of dialogue.
Well, I mean, Paragon and Renegade, very similar to, for example, what's this game? It was a superhero game, Infamous. Yeah, and some other games of that era had morality systems. I mean, KOTOR also had light side and dark side. So that was a trend that was growing. Now it's most games are moved away from it, but it was a trend of the time. Are you a complete bastard or a great hero? Fallout 3 also had it, but that came actually morality systems went all the way back to the original Fallout, because you could be a complete bastard or it could be a hero. Not many points in between, but there was that, right? And also BioWare on Baldur's Gate and Neverwinter Nights, you could change alignment depending what you did, but usually you just if you had a class that was depending on alignment, you just kept playing to that type, and you never really suffered much of a penalty. But there was that. So yeah, it was a game that had I like to call it a transitional game in many ways, mechanically, because they had the thing where you shoot enemies, and you get and you get experience for doing that, and hacking things give you experience and stuff like that. So it felt more like a D&D game that way. But at the same time was trying to do new things, like third cover base shooting, third person shooting, at least for new things for BioWare anyway, and the Mako.
The good old Mako.
Yeah. So original Mass Effect comes out. We might talk a little later. We talk about the strengths and weaknesses of it. But then Mass Effect 2 came out, and when Mass Effect 2 came out, a little something had happened, and that of course was Electronic Arts. They bought BioWare. BioWare stopped being BioWare Corporation and became BioWare, a wholly owned subsidiary by Electronic Arts. And I think that's when things went off the rails. Even though at the time myself, I didn't notice it because it worked well for the particular game we're going to talk about. But looking back, that's when I go like, yeah, if you hadn't done that, maybe we wouldn't have this big problem with the entire series.
Yep, they went for a bigger, flashier, oh my god, the Shepard's dead. And the marketing on that game was just over the top. It's probably I think that's when we started to see the trend in general in gaming of overhype before that was a term.
Yeah, I think, but I'm talking about the narrative's causation of having Shepard die, and I think it has, and this is where I really point the finger at EA, because although within the game it's a cool scene, it's an opening scene, like, oh my god, your main character's dead and it comes back. Oh my god, that really, it was a bit of a shocker when it happened to me the first time around, of course. Although it's not the first time that BioWare kills a main character and brings him back in the same game, at least. I won't tell you which game does it because I don't want to ruin it if you haven't played the one, but it has happened before. But that happened midway to the game. Actually, it happened, now that I think about it, in 2 BioWare games, it has happened at some point. But it wasn't used in the same way that was used in Mass Effect 2, which is sort of like a soft reset. I think that's the problem.
Yeah, it doesn't actually affect Shepard in any way. It wasn't until we got to the third game where they decided, oh yeah, we should probably acknowledge that this might have some psychological ramifications on Shepard. And even then, it was never fleshed out.
Yeah, I think the whole Destiny was supposed to, it was designed to introduce people who had either never played the original, because the original, maybe you might know, it didn't belong to EA. It belonged to Microsoft Games, because Mass Effect was one of those launch titles for the Xbox 360. Microsoft had not sold the rights to this particular title, although EA owned the rights to the series, to the IP in general, but not to that game. So how do you solve the problem of people that are coming in new who may not have a 360 if you want to sell it on a PC or want to sell it later on a PlayStation, or haven't played the original and not feel like they're locked out? Well, you kill the main character, you bring them back to life and go like, okay, fresh start. But it wasn't, was it?
No. Because it's the middle of a trilogy, so how can you start over?
Yeah, and also it depends. It does have a couple. I played the version where you use the comic book, that interactive comic book.
Yeah.
And compared to the original, it feels like there's a lot of stuff missing. Like there's stuff like just like there should be, this character should appear even as a minor NPC, or this conversation should happen, but it doesn't because it's not in the save file. So
yeah, like one of the main missions of the first Mass Effect is missing from that comic, which is Pharos, the colony that's under attack by the Geth.
Yeah,
But
they just completely.
completely ignored, and honestly, overall irrelevant to the trilogy.
Well, um, I think it was designed to be more of a bit of a filler, but also, I mean, I liked the Pharaoh's mission in the first game. I really did.
Yeah, especially the Thorian was a
The
good
Thor,
concept
yeah.
too.
Well, it was important. Well, I guess it should have been important if what Shepard gets out of that mission, which was extremely important for the original Mass Effect, was used in the other games.
Yeah,
But it wasn't. So
it should have been the reason why Shepard was brought back to life, because he's potentially the only one who has the Prothean cipher in his head, but that nothing becomes of that, and you only use it one other time in Mass Effect 3 if you were dumb enough to pre-order the game and got From Ashes DLC with it.
mm-hmm. And even then, when you're supposed to use it in Thessia, if you bring that character with you, Javik, it's like they can do it for you.
Yeah.
It's like, well, okay, so thanks, I guess.
Oh, and it's not even the Thessia mission doesn't even reference the cipher. It just references that Shepard knows what it is to feel go through the Prothean beacon, not so much the cipher, because he senses the beacon based on the events of the prologue in the first game.
No, but I think Edie tells Liara, because Liara is complaining and crying that she should have known about this and mother should have told him, and Edie tells her, you would have needed Shepard's cipher in order to understand what that beacon was saying.
True.
Yeah, so it's there. But going back to the death of Shepard and the rebirth of Shepard, it was designed, I think, from a economic point of view, from a marketing point of view, to make it easier to introduce people to the story. But it led to a situation where you essentially, instead of having a story that, one plot follows the other, like you have your first part and your second part and your third part sort of fitting together, you had these two parallel stories. Because and Mass Effect was incredibly fun. It's a great game. But essentially, it's a rethread of the first game. Shepard goes out, has a ship, gets a crew, has to fight the proxies of the Reapers. Instead of the Reapers coming to Shepard, Shepard goes to the Reapers. But that's it, And it's all done so that we don't get the Reaper invasion. It's like we're putting the Reaper invasion on hold that we told you was imminent at the end of Mass Effect, so we can have all this. So then we can have the Reaper invasion in number 3, right? And it was like, and Shepard doesn't really do much of the things that he was said that he was going to do. He was going to find resources and try to find a way to stop the Reaper, etc. He's just going against another group that serves as a standing for the Reapers until BioWare decided to actually give us the Reapers in 3.
Yeah, Mass Effect 2 was a lost opportunity because honestly, pretty much nothing from Mass Effect 2 is important to Mass Effect 3. Not even the final choice of what you do with the collector base.
Yeah.
It's only really used if you have a low EMS score, and that's it.
and EMS scores really don't mean anything considering what the ending is all about. But we'll get that to the moment. And in fact, also the idea is, I think they Mass Effect 2, I think it can also be seen from the lens of EA. It's like EA looked at the marketing of the original game and what they thought the success of that game. It's like, more romances, more gunfights, more moral choices, whatever those may be, which were not entirely bad. Yeah, the Renegade system, although some of them were funny and some were I liked that system was supposed to be something that was a part of the original, and they cut it out because they didn't have time. But I almost felt that the decisions in the first game were a little bit more nuanced than the ones in the second game. Especially if you went Renegade, it was like, I'm just being a jerk. I'm going to make a stupid joke, right? except for pushing a guy out the window. That actually felt good. But or maybe shooting, except for those things, a couple of times, like it's more like I'm gonna do what feels good in the moment, or I just want to be a jerk. While being Paragon, it was like, oh well, I'm a good guy, and this is okay, whatever.
I don't kill
and-
people, even though I go around shooting people all the time.
Yes, I don't usually kill people. Explosion in the background and a room full of bodies. And it's like, well, they shot first. I just, I'm a Spectre. I have a license to kill, but I just if I can talk to people. That's fine. I mean, I don't have to kill you in a myriad of ways. And by the way, where the hell did I lift my grenades? God damn it! I missed it. I really missed the grenades from the. Hopefully they were in the third game, but in the second game they were like, I have to talk to that guy and do his mission in order to get one type of grenades.
Yeah.
No, BioWare, you did me wrong there.
And then of course there's the travesty of thermal clips. That is a sore point for me.
You know what? I think thermal clips are a problem because they were in the first game. Because to be honest, and this is a mechanical thing, reloading, it's usually part of the cover-based system. So it's sort of the stop, go, take a time, the timing of how you do combat in a cover-based system. The ones I've seen that are pretty good include reloading. Because I remember in the first game, I almost always took assault rifles once I could get in all classes. Update the assault rifle, stand in a part of the map, usually at the entrance, and just hose down anything and everything that came down. And just kill everything. Like, 20 Krogan are coming in charging at me. I got incendiary ammo and it limited. I have this sort of bullet hose. It was oh, you're dead? Okay, next one. Okay. Oh, 2 or 3 are coming. Okay, Liara, I just suspend them in the air until I kill this one. Okay, fine, I'm done,
See, I wouldn't have mind if there were small things such as there was an option to have our old cooldown system for weapons, and of course there's the issue of Jacob's mission where this group that disappeared 10 years suddenly have thermal clips, which are only introduced 2 years prior.
And your enemies have thermal clips, even though they use completely different technology, beam technology. They have thermal clips.
It would have been interesting if that entire level would have been a challenge because you were really low on thermal clips. If they just wanted to stick to a thermal clip system, or maybe that's where you picked up an old-fashioned gun that is a cooldown.
Yeah, I think I've heard, again, most of the stuff is unsourced, that it was supposed to be a dual system, like you could have a cooldown system and the thermal clips. How that's supposed to work, I don't know exactly, because the thermal clips are supposed to make loading faster, but the cooldown system meant you never actually loaded, so
you practically never ran out of ammo because there's always those times I always hated in any prior game where it's like, oh no, we're running low on thermal clips. I'm like, this wouldn't have been an issue if you still had your cooldown guns. You just have to take cover for a little longer and your gun's all good to go.
Yeah. So in the second game, I mean, there's a lot of stuff in the second game that's very interesting, but I think a lot of the energy was spent on like, oh, we have a fan base, let's give them whatever we think they're gonna want, whatever that may be. It doesn't matter if it makes sense or not. And also, they try to shoehorn a lot of cool ideas that then they had to abandon. Like Legion. Legion is one of the best characters in the series. Oh, well, whatever development had to do with Legion, we had to throw that away because we have to go back to murder robots, murder everything. So, make it a threat. It's like, no, they want to talk to us. Here's, hey, I'm a Spectre. I can actually bring Legion to the Citadel. Hey, they want to have peace with us, Hey, you have psionic powers that read minds. I have a cipher that can understand everything there is to know about Protheans. Let's link up with the minds and do stuff. And right, I mean, that's the thing. It's like when you created this sort of parallel version of Mass Effect, by the time you get to Mass Effect 3, you gotta sort of bring them together, and they kind of didn't. They were like, Mass Effect
Yeah.
important, Mass Effect 2, let's go with that.
I think a lot of us were blinded by the ending of Mass Effect 2 because that entire suicide mission is pretty kick-ass. You
Yeah.
get your adrenaline pumping. You got to be careful that all these characters that you've picked up and you might actually like don't die.
Mm-hmm.
And then you bail and you blow up the base, and whoa, it's just a rush of adrenaline.
You
And
feel
even then,
yeah, go ahead.
and even then, like my first playthrough, I'm like, wow, that's good. And on the second, I did a second, Renegade playthrough, and I'm like, well, on the second go, I'm like, yeah, it's pretty good. But like, I'm not entirely sure how this ties into the first game, or how this is going to tie into the third game. But I'm sure BioWare is going to be able to wrap things up nicely and tie it all together. And with the third game,
Both games had a sense of one of the things about the endings about the first second games that they had a sense of accomplishment. Like you felt like you did something, right? Big Bad Reaper shows up. Sure, we fight a robot thing, cyborg thing that it was controlling, but we beat it and we beat the Reaper and we're done. We go to the base of the enemies, we blow them up or capture it, whatever. We did a thing, right? That's not what happens in Mass Effect 3. To be honest, I don't know what happened in Mass Effect 3. There's so many versions of it, like, oh, by the way, the game got delayed, so, and then it got leaked and stuff like that. So that kind of happened. And I think it...
And of course, they also shoehorned in a multiplayer aspect, which
EA.
I've heard that, that didn't take resources from the main story. But I mean, you still... Even if those resources came from somewhere else, those are still resources that could have gone into the single player campaign.
It's about the budget. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
The more you put in a game, the more it's going to cost. So either you spend more money or you have to do more with less. So let's not kid ourselves. I heard that people say, oh, no, multiplayer game is like, yeah, because you're already factoring in multiplayer. But in case of Mass Effect, there was never really a need for multiplayer. So it's like, now you have to have it. So
yeah, I do remember reading that there was like a multiplayer spin-off game that they were toying with, like back in the first Mass Effect, but I think that was supposed to be its own thing and not quite tied into to a main game.
Well, I think there was going to be two things. I think that one of the DLC, I forgot the name, it's a station something or other. What's the name?
Oh, Pinnacle Station.
I think Pinnacle Station was supposed to be that because it kind of feels that way. It feels very much FPS, even though third person. And the whole concept of a Pinnacle Station is an FPS. You're here, you're shooting things. Here's so much scenarios. You shoot some more things, that sort of thing. And there was also going to be seeing some pictures. It's the internet, so you got to be careful what they show you. That looked like an FPS for Mass Effect, but it's going to be something completely different. It wasn't going to be Shepard. It was going to be someone else.
Yeah, there's a like Solarian shooting on the beaches of Vermeer. Yeah. I think I know which one you're talking about.
And there was an FPS for Mass Effect, but that one was on iOS, the worst platform to put a first-person shooter. So it was like, and you're playing a ex-Cerberus agent that's trying to escape from Cerberus. So it's like, they tried. They didn't succeed, but they tried.
Yeah, I think I remember trying that game, and it felt weird.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think the character had no introduction. You just get dropped in, and off you go. Like I didn't bother playing it.
It feels like they're just shoving shovelware. Basically, that's what it feels like. And,
pretty much.
Yeah. So now we're in the part of the history of Mass Effect 3. Mass Effect has a great acclaim by critics. It has a growing fan base. A lot of people are expecting it. I, alongside New Vegas, were the two games I've ever pre-ordered and regretted. And so I started playing Mass Effect 3, and it was like, oh, there's this MacGuffin that you never mentioned before. But that's okay. And all my characters are back, and finally there's the Reapers attacking, and then Cerberus attacks the Citadel for some reason. But it's still cool. Okay. and I'm playing it, and I'm having fun, and like, okay, why are we going to Earth again? But the thing is in space. Okay, we're here and we're rushing and and and
Yeah.
I would say, because I'm a mechanics kind of first kind of person, that ironically Mass Effect 3 is the best of the lot. They shows that they learn from the other games and adapted and created the systems I think they really wanted to put from the get go. But that's the thing, is that Mass Effect was supposed to be this great narrative game, this great trilogy.
Yeah, it's very telling when they put in that those three options at the beginning where it's like, do you want to go with auto dialogues and the action option, or a storytelling, or I think there was like a third middle ground one.
Play
It's like,
Mass Effect.
wait.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's not Mass Effect.
Yeah, and I guess again they were trying to say, oh, there's people who play quote unquote for the story, and so I guess they just wanted to streamline that, I suppose, for people who just want to do the shooting and then wanted to minimize the combat for other people. You know,
Oh, there goes my dogs. Hey, I hear the ice cream man outside.
it's hot, so I can't blame them. And you have that, and so it's like you're trying to start to please everyone by doing this. That's not a good move. And again, you start seeing this sort of, we're not going to build a game that we think it's a good game. We're going to try to make a game that I think our fans want to play.
and
But-
and maybe some other people that aren't necessarily our fans but might see the cover and want to try it.
Yeah.
I don't think I've ever met anyone that has said they've bought Mass Effect 3 for the shooting.
No. I mean,
The multiplayer maybe, but not the
No.
single player campaign.
I like the improvements, right? I like the shooting, I like the mechanics, and I said Mass Effect 3 had the best mechanics, because you can see the improvements there, and the very tactical. I like when you combine things like biotics and tech powers, and people exploding in gouts of like flame and blood,
And yeah, you can duck in and out of cover and
And you
jump.
and you move much faster. You have melee attacks and stuff like that. Clearly, that was something that they wanted to do for a very long time, and they got to do it in Mass Effect 3. But since the focus was supposed to be the narrative, and they had these two games that were just running side by side or repeating itself, it was like, what do we do? Well, we're going to mostly ignore Mass Effect 2, but we can't do that completely because people who play that game want to see these characters again. And there's this one important element, so we're going to bring it here. And Mass Effect 3 is like a jigsaw puzzle trying to get two, one could argue, distinct games together, mash them together. And that's what we got in the end, a mashup.
Yeah, my experience is very similar to yours. This is probably the first game I ever pre-ordered. It's also the first game I went out to a midnight release. I stood in line. I won a really crappy looking Mass Effect 3 poster. Like it actually, I've never seen it. I took a picture of it because I gave it to my cousin, because I've never seen this poster online anywhere. But it's essentially a male shepherd like standing in front of a wrecked Golden Gate Bridge, which never happens in the game. It's like something that GameStop's supposed to put in their window. But I got like my bras, those caffeinated drinks, and I powered through that, and I was so confused by the end of the game.
Yeah.
Because I'm like, well, I was exactly just like, oh, okay, yeah, okay. I was just waiting for like this twist with Cerberus, because I'm like, okay, so Cerberus is being really shady again. I mean, they have to have a good reason. Like it's not. It's just, oh, the Illusive Man's indoctrinated, and he's just opposing you.
To me, narratively speaking, I feel that if you finish Mass Effect and you didn't play Mass Effect 2 and started in Mass Effect 3, like right there, like, oh, Shepard's on Earth trying to get people to help him against the Reapers and talking to the Admiral, that, okay, it just goes from one point to the other. But having played Mass Effect 2, it's like, but but Shepard's a renegade, and Cerberus was sort of helping them, but not really. But they were bad guys in the first game, but not bad guys in the second game. And we know that the Quarians may want peace or not really, and how do you bring all this together, right? And you have this EMS setting, and you're like, but I keep playing the game and doing all the things, and it just doesn't go from the middle, and it's like, how's that gonna work? And I get all these I mean, there was a mismatch of the surrounding elements, which just seemed like a mismatch. Like, oh, we need galactic readiness. What does that mean? Doesn't mean anything, right? Because you don't see it. There's a mechanic. It's not even a mechanic. It's a gauge.
Yeah, it's sort of it's a little interesting because it's sort of a tie into the multiplayer. You're playing as other soldiers that are helping you out throughout this war, and it's getting you ready. So it's sort of affecting your first player readiness score. That's how you move that bar from the middle to like the end.
Mm-hmm.
Is you have to play the multiplayer and play with different characters, and you have to play in different sections of the galaxy map in the multiplayer, and that increases your readiness. And that, like, I can see what they're doing, and that's kind of interesting, tying it in and sort of having the multiplayer not be so separate from the campaign and the events.
Mm-hmm.
And sort of if you played those stupid N7 missions, those are all pretty much recycled multiplayer levels. That's exactly what they are. And one of them actually has a like an NPC in there she's like you don't actually interact with her, but she helps you in the level, quote unquote, in some refinery level, and you can later
the refinery.
You later go to the Spectre terminal and you can promote her to an N7, which is pretty much prestiging in the multiplayer.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just kind of like, oh yeah, the multiplayer exists, you should play that.
Yeah, the level where all the humans are wearing full body armor and masks,
Yeah.
but the Turians apparently have no problem breathing the air, the very toxic, irradiated air, because radiation works exactly like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a cool map, but still, like
But yeah, so I can see the tie-in between that, but again, those resources could have been spent on crafting a better story.
Yeah, but I think they already were kind of handicapped by what came before, right?
Yeah.
And so they had to. I made a video about the ending, and I basically said there is an ending that is serviceable, right? If you just stopped at, hey, I pressed a button and stuff happens based on all the things that I've done, not only in this game but in the in the series, you would have an ending. I think people would have said, okay, this kind of was what I was hoping for, right? That's what we were shooting for. It wouldn't mean a great ending. It would have been well written. It wouldn't have, bring the Oscar or something like that, or Nobel literary prize or anything like that. But
Yay, Earth.
but it would have been, logically speaking, that would have been what you were aiming for. Instead, we go and start talking to the Starbrat, and he starts to explain the Reapers. And I'm like, but I already saw what the Reapers were doing in 2. They're using us to reproduce. They're, that's what they do, right? No, they're like fire and ice, and they were very smart a moment ago, but now they're completely moronic because I'm the one who runs them. And by the way, the Protheans were here before, but they never saw me, and they mess with my system.
I've always been here. I've just been asleep.
And now because you plug this thing, now I'm like awake. But if I'm asleep, how can I control the Reapers? And like, kid, you're not making sense. Oh, let's get an extended cut. Let's gonna fix it. You make even less sense now. And we're gonna give you a DLC that introduces the creators of Reapers. Okay, this is cool. Tell me what you were. So the problem was AI, and you created. No, let's just. I'm in denial, and it's right now. And it's not only a river in Egypt; it's also my headache I got from playing your game.
I thought about making once I'm done with my Citadel review, I thought I'd make like quick just thoughts on the other DLCs. Generally my idea of to summarize Leviathan DLC is
Mhm.
there's a part where Shepard can ask, they'll explain, oh yeah, we were the Apex, we made the relays, we made the Citadel, we made everything, and then Shepard can ask like, hey, here's the plans for the Crucible, like what is it and what's the catalyst? Oh, we've seen this, we don't know, and just like play the we've seen they explained they've seen this plan before, they've seen people working on it, they don't know what it is, they've made the Citadel, they see you have these plans, it's like, and all you have to do is just play the Citadel or the Crucible docking onto the Citadels, like
Yeah.
really, like you made this, like how could you not figure this out,
Hmm.
like you guys are the Apex.
Yeah.
No.
And by the way, they'd be able to survive in one form or another for what, 1 billion years or more? If we go by
Maybe
Leviathan,
the
Leviathan with
endless cycles. So yeah.
the Leviathan with this is supposed to be about 1 billion years old. So that means that they've been around for that long or more. Even if the Reapers were not around, survival of a species as a living entity, being able to survive for billions of years is pretty difficult. Especially hiding
Yeah,
out
but
in one planet because they can't be flying around in space. They're going to be discovered eventually, right? So it's like,
yeah, I think their idea is that they every once in a while they'll move to a different planet and just try to cover their trail. But it's like, just can you imagine, like how has there not been infighting? Like how has there not been a faction that says, we should probably go fight? Why are we hiding? But of
especially,
course they mentioned that they keep their numbers down, their population levels. How have you not had any issues with your genetics? And by this point, how have you not been like a different species?
and also you can control other species. You
Yeah,
had that power, but you couldn't control them from destroying themselves.
no,
And when the Reapers show up, you couldn't just control the species and say, we know how the Reapers work because we build them. Build this bunch of weapons that destroy the Reapers. Go and just commit yourself mass suicide. We don't care. We just want to survive. Kill the Reapers and start anew. It's like, well, there's more species. We just got to control them. It's like this problem solved. It's like we can just use endless waves of whatever species happens to be. Give them the weapons. You go like, just go kill yourselves against the Reapers. Just go. Like.
yeah. They should have left the entire mystery of like what the Reapers, what their end goal was, who created them, with Tally's face. They should just never bothered.
Yeah, I think they could have done something with it, but part of it is I think we already knew. Like, again, one of the things that you get to ignore from Mass Effect 2 is like you literally see a Reaper being created. It's like, okay, they pick a species, they harvest a species, and they make more of them.
We don't know why, but
Well, a kind of reproduction, right?
yeah.
I mean,
I mean, as far as we
they're
know, maybe it is reproduction, even though that contradicts what a Sovereign says in the first game, which is like, oh, you couldn't understand our reasons.
well, yeah. I mean, but I think just somebody just being a dick, right?
Yeah,
That's the other thing about the Reapers. They're like they like, oh, you're inferior. It's like they think themselves to be so arrogant that we couldn't understand them, but it turns out that they are understandable, right? And that's another problem is that you try to sort of keep the mystery of the Reapers. It's like, but you already show me so much, reward me for figuring stuff out. If you have this whole scene where that's what they're doing, it's like, okay, yes, that's what they're doing. It's like, okay, that makes perfect sense. They survive for billions of years. They exploit and harvest existing, species, and they just keep on going. They don't care about us. They see us as sort of food and I don't know, the equivalent of sperm and ovaries, whatever genetic material that just uses, and that's fine. We don't want
and
to do
even
that.
yeah, and even then, it doesn't make sense because then why? What's up with the dragon's teeth? The like at the end, do you just take husk and do you throw them in the vat too? Because you're using up your genetic resource there. And of course, that's also not explained that I think Vigil explains that they're indoctrinated forces, they just kind of abandon them and leave them to die.
Well, I think there's extended, not Sovereign, but what's the other big Reaper that in the Mass Effect 2?
A
Harbinger.
Harbinger.
Talks about how the Reapers, if we're to let him to keep talking while he's shooting at you, he keeps
Yeah.
talking nonsense, and he talks about how they reject other races. And I
Yeah.
think there's some place where they said that they rejected the Protheans as well. So what
They
happens is that it's not every species. It has to be a specific species that they say, oh, this is a species, it's a pinnacle species, and we're going to use them to make more Reapers.
yeah,
Everybody
they
else
if
gets F, right? So the idea is that we conquer this race. Everybody else is going to still messing with us. We're just going to kill everybody else and start anew, right?
Yeah, it's based on what your party members are. He says Asari, the fact they have to rely on other species to reproduce, which isn't actually true, is debilitating. Geth are inferior, Turians are primitive,
Yeah.
Krogans are kinda because of the genophage, which again doesn't make sense. You could probably bypass that. Your
Yeah.
Reapers.
Yeah.
Solarians, their low lifespan is an issue, which again I don't understand why that would be an issue for the Reapers.
But I mean, there is a way. I mean, you could expand on that. If you're going to give an explanation and you already have this as a seed, then you can expand on that. But instead of like, no, 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 forget all that. We're going to go back to being mysterious. And it's like, but.
Yeah, humans are special too. I hate that from Mass Effect 2.
Yeah.
Like, humans are special because of their DNA. And it's like, no, not really.
No.
If you know anything about genetics, we're not really that different from each other.
No, I think they got it wrong in that sense. Like, oh, no, it's the opposite. You have to have more diversity of locations in order to have diversity of genes. So no, unless you're trying to get the way they explained it was the reverse. It's a good baseline because there isn't a lot of differentiation between humans, so you can use it as a baseline as opposed to like they're very distinct. Like no, because we haven't been to other planets for a long time. We haven't been affected by other atmospheres and gravity and different places, and we haven't lived long enough to have that differentiation. Solarians, Asari, others have been living on other planets and gone to other things and used technology to modify themselves, so they should have far more variations than humanity. But I don't know. And by the way, that's kind of weird because what used to be the presidents of BioWare were doctors.
Yeah.
With these two doctors, it was like, didn't somebody run that bit by them? It's like, hey, doc, maybe you remember something from biology. I have a doctor character who is also a biologist. You might want to check my lines here. I know you're busy, boss, but I just want to mess this up.
Talking about why there can't be any gays in Mass Effect 2, or why Shepard can't be gay.
Mm-hmm. So we have that. We run the gamut of the original trilogy, and then from that ending, we ended up with Andromeda. And this is where we get to the Kotaku article about what happened with Mass Effect Andromeda, starting with the fact that it got pawned off to a secondary studio, Montreal and not Edmonton, which was the main studio for everything BioWare. Do you think that is a factor that we have to consider?
So I looked at their Wikipedia page, and it seems like all they've ever really put out or they're known for are a bunch of Mass Effect DLCs. So I would say maybe like sure, maybe it's kind of hard to say for sure because I haven't played it yet. So now I'm wondering if a lot of Mass Effect Andromeda's content is like a bunch of DLC stitched together. Maybe it is. I couldn't tell you for myself. But I'm going to say probably. That's just the baffling part. So after Mass Effect 3, you have the whole ending controversy. You essentially lost a bunch of goodwill with your hardcore fans. And rather than devoting all this focus on this franchise that you lost a lot of goodwill to make up for it, you just kind of pawn it off to the B team and just hope for the best.
Again, I think it's EA wanting to keep the franchise alive as long as possible and milk as much money from it as possible, right? And now that they realize that they can't really do that, now we're hearing that there won't be any DLC for Mass Effect Andromeda. That Mass Effect as a franchise is sort of on standby. It's they put it on hold, which is never a good idea, especially with EA's story of what they do to their developers.
So from what my understanding is, you after Mass Effect 3, you have people still working on Dragon Age Inquisition, which think of it what you will, it's a pretty good, decent game.
Yeah, I liked it.
I liked it too. It has its issues, but overall, I liked it, and I think that helped win a lot of, like, as I'm going to assume a lot of Mass Effect fans are also probably Dragon Age fans. I'm sure that helped win back some of that goodwill, but probably not all of it, but some. Then you got those resources probably allocated to the next Mass Effect game, but from my understanding, most of the people are going to be working on either the Star Wars
MMO, yeah,
RPG, and the new Anthem IP.
Yeah, that's another thing. It's like if you think talk about the Inquisition, and I know you are a fan of Dragon Age 2. I'm not. We talked about this when we might talk about it in the future. While we don't agree, while you're wrong, and that's perfectly fine.
I know I'm wrong.
But in many ways, I'd like to call Inquisition sort of like the saving throw. Like they were like, okay, not everybody was happy. We do have a core fan base that liked it because they like all things Dragon Age. Let's try to, we heard the criticism. Let's try to make a better game, even a different game. And for the most part, they succeeded. So they got people like me saying, oh, if they can do that with Dragon Age, I don't see why they couldn't do it with Mass Effect. And while, again, everything I've seen about Andromeda, it doesn't make it a horrific game. It's not a crater of a comet of shit that landed on Earth or something. I mean, when I talk about that bad, it just feels like it was like, we're gonna do it. We're committed. We're just gonna do it. Also, continuing Mass Effect when you have this new sci-fi IP. I mean, one thing is to say Star Wars. Star Wars is Star Wars.
Yeah.
Nobody's gonna confuse Star Wars with anything else, unless you really mess it up. You make such a generic game and just put the name Star Wars on it that people are like, "This isn't Star Wars." But when you already have a strong sci-fi theme IP, and you're gonna make another new IP as well, and Mass Effect has its own look, a space one, but it isn't as well established. People say this is Mass Effect. I know exactly what Mass Effect is. For a lot of people who don't know it, it's gonna look generic anyway.
Yeah, it's not ingrained into the general popular culture. It's probably well known within nerd culture, but it hasn't extended to regular society, not like Star Wars has.
No, so it doesn't have that feel of being unique that Star Wars had. So you're doing Star Wars, you're doing Mass Effect, and now you're doing Anthem as well. And clearly Anthem, which has been even longer in development because it began shortly after Mass Effect 3 as well, and it's been about 5 years from then. It's going to be where they're putting their focus, right? That's why EA is saying, we got the money, make this happen, right? I had a discussion with somebody who said, oh, it's not going to be like Destiny, that Electronic Arts is not chasing the Destiny whale. And I'll say, well, it kind of it looks very generic.
It looks like it.
It kind of looks like it.
It looks pretty generic by today's standards. If this is probably announced like 3 years ago,
yeah,
it probably would have been revolutionary.
And we already had people were talking about this. The last time I had a podcast on YouTube with Glooty Pal, who I haven't talked to for a while. We talked about some of the problems that we were getting, all the rumors that we're getting around Mass Effect Andromeda, that the writers left the program, that the original showrunner Casey Hudson left. I would have never given Casey Hudson any other project myself, right? And supposedly Casey Hudson, and this is again going back to the whole, let's try to split hairs, let's try to give the audience what we think they like. Basically, he said, okay, we went to our forums, we went to social media, this is what people want. It's like
they took surveys too.
It's like the only people that are going to be on those surveys and are going to do those things are people who actually love whatever it is that you do, no matter what. So they're critically blind, or people who absolutely hate what you do, who just want to sort of, just want to roll it up in a pile of flaming, flesh and just throw it out the window or something. You're not going to get a good feel for what the general gaming public wants or doesn't want. And if you don't, who's going to, oh yeah, I have to go and fill in the survey clearly because I must save the future of Mass Effect. No, I'm playing Call of Duty or whatever. I don't care. I'm playing my other games. Darkest Dungeon had a new release. I'm playing that. It's like, that's not a good way to sort of decide how to do it. It's like, oh, we're going to make a sequel that is not really a sequel, but has some callbacks, but not so many callbacks. But we're gonna contradict a major piece of lore by going to another galaxy and not running into the Reapers while doing it. And they're gonna allow us to do it, by the way, because sure, if we can actually pull this off, we could just skip the whole Reaper cycle thing. But hey.
Yeah, it lets us milk that cow.
It's
for Dragon Age Inquisition has a lot to think of Mass Effect 3 for, because after that debacle, they did announce that, we're going to give Dragon Age Inquisition another year of development because of all of, this rush production probably didn't work out in our favor.
Mm-hmm.
These year and a half development cycles aren't giving us good quality games. So let's give Dragon Age Inquisition another year. We got, fans have basically Mass Effect 3 to thank for being able to romance Colin, because I believe that's something they added in that year. They also made it to where Iron Bull can romance dwarves, because that was going to be an animation limitation or something. I'm not entirely sure what else they worked on, but those were the two that stood out of my mind.
The sex scenes, as they are in Dragon Age Inquisition, are not graphic enough for me to think that's going to be a limitation. But okay,
that's what they said.
I suppose it's supposed to. I guess the different heights. They're
pretty much going to make. Yeah, they're pretty much going to say, "Oh yeah, we're totally too incompatible. I'm too big for you." Essentially,
isn't that the entire romance when he tries to talk you out of, romance? He's like, this is gonna hurt. It's like, yeah, no, this okay. That's so romantic. Oh my god, yeah. And you know what? I have a theory about Iron Bull. I think Iron Bull was Patrick Week's personal fantasy.
I think a lot of the Mass Effect 2 characters are a bunch of the writers' fantasies.
Yes. Oh, we have a big budget and we can do whatever we want. Talking about that is just a quick aside. Yvonne Strahovski, who does the voice and face for Miranda Lawson, she did an interview a couple of years ago, and she gets asked about the character, and this is what she said, and I'm paraphrasing: "It's my face, it's my voice, it's not my body," which says a lot, I think. I love Miranda. She's one of my favorite characters, but I don't mind her body at all. But if you have a situation where the actress feels compelled to say that, you gotta go back and go like, you know what? Maybe we just went a little overboard with this, right?
Yeah, I don't think Freddie Prince Jr. probably gets that. It's like,
Hmm.
oh hey, Iron Bull, or James Vega.
Yeah.
Oh,
Actually,
I
I seen him. I follow him on Twitter, and he actually is pretty proud of those two characters. Right? He likes Vega. He likes the character he does. He does on Rebels as well. So
but I'm sure he doesn't get any compliments on his body not matching. It's
true.
probably
That's
not the same.
yeah,
Same. I
yeah.
wonder if Samara's character, because I believe her face and voice actor does cosplayer.
The face and body because she's a
Yeah.
model, but not the voice.
Oh,
Not the voice. She does the she basically cosplays as Samara, right? So there's that. But now that we're Mass Effect Andromeda, we're going back into subject. There were a lot of rumors about things not right with Andromeda, right? People leaving, people making comments, the fact that it was Mass Effect, that was Montreal, like you said before, people who do mostly DLCs. I mean, it could have turned out better, but now that we've seen the Kotaku article, which was confirmed in a Reddit article recently about this week, then essentially what they found, they said, well, it's true, that we stand by what we wrote. And essentially was out of a 5-year development, 3 years were spent doing not much about do nothing, right? They tried to do different things, procedural generated stuff, a la No Man's Sky. They tried this, they tried that. There was no coherent idea behind Mass Effect Andromeda other than let's make another Mass Effect game.
yeah. I think the first red flag should have been those surveys, because they hadn't. They were essentially just asking, hey, which of these staple alien races should we write out? And I think a lot of people were saying the Quarians too.
Hmm.
But and of course those characters are absent. You got no Quarians, you got no Hanar, you got no Alcor.
Yeah, and also another problem is if you look at original Mass Effect, the humans were the sort of they were newcomers into the galaxy, but there was an establishment there. Going to Andromeda, I miss to me, and I don't see anything that's actually reflected in the game. So audience chat, if you actually listen to this or on YouTube, I'm not accusing Andromeda or the writers of doing this, but it felt like we're now sort of like the invaders, right? We're gonna impose ourselves in a new society. We're gonna take our tech. Oh, by the way, tech that, and this has always been a problem with Mass Effect and sci-fi in general. Like this tech is still good tech, 600 years and a galaxy away, that doesn't suffer from whatever it is that happens that holds the tech back in
Yeah,
in the Milky Way galaxy.
yeah. It's what a convenience that you guys aren't technically at a disadvantage or an advantage. You guys are on par.
Hmm. And you can use all the weapons and all the stuff, and it's
Good thing, good thing Daddy Ryder left all this ammo lying around.
yeah, and stuff like that. I mean, again, Andromeda feels more like we're just gonna keep making the stuff. There's an audience, people are willing to buy it. We think we sort of iron out the problems that the audience had with the last series, so we're just gonna make it making money. Now it seems that EA decided, you know what? No, this is we spent too much money on this. We're not getting the kind of return that we want. So maybe no DLC, and maybe no more Mass Effect for a while. People have been talking. There's been some rumors about remaking the series, but let's be honest. And this, I think, the final conclusion I want to get to it, because now we're reaching to the 10-hour, the 1 hour mark. I don't think anyone is going to try to make another Mass Effect as a close sort of grand epic, narrative epic. You can do episodic. You can try to do connected stories in some way, like thematically, the same characters, that sort of thing. But trying to make this sweeping saga thing is just it's kind of it requires a lot of stuff that it's not part of how video games are made. It requires reassessing how publishers and developers work and their priorities. It would require people to have like a dedicated staff that could sort of have the guardians of continuity. Like, oh yeah, you use this stuff here for this tech, or that character said this and that. You can't just overwrite it. And if you are, you gotta explain it, and writers come and go, and project directors come and go. I mean, it's hard enough for Hollywood to do it. TV shows mess it up all the time, and they're in a episodic format. I mean, the only show that I really sort of close to do it was Babylon 5 back in the 90s, and it was designed to be that way and had to go through all other hurdles. Doing that as a video game, that's I think. And if, well, we're gonna close in with sort of ideas of what would be needed to fix Mass Effect if we're gonna remake it.
Well, my idea for how Andromeda would have worked is if you don't start as an initial first contact person, like one of the people establishing it, more like you start off as someone who was born in Andromeda on a ship that is from the Milky Way, sort of like they have sort of explored like what the Quarians would be on ships. And maybe you've become of age, and now it's off for you to explore and maybe bring something, and maybe get caught up in this overarching, epic narrative story or something where you have to make choices, and you end up building your own colony or claiming your own planet or stopping the Andromeda aliens, for wiping out the Milky Way galaxies. That way, you could also find out what's happened in these X number of years since our species arrived to the new galaxy. You explore what became of some of these other races. Are they still around?
Mm-hmm.
And just kind of set that up.
Yeah, I think a clean break would have been great. I think that's one of the problems with BioWare. BioWare doesn't. They don't. I call them that they really don't make. They really don't apologize for anything. They kind of they make fixes and they adjust things, but they never say, you know what, A, we screwed up, B, we're sorry, and D and C, I skipped C. This is what we're gonna do about it. Because I think Andromeda should have been a clean break. Like, it
should have. It's sort of the thing with BioWare is that they go back with what they're known for is continuity, because, well, continuity in terms of let's not count retconning, but just the fact that, hey, your actions from your previous games actually happened and are acknowledged in later games. No, Dragon Age isn't necessarily a trilogy or anything, but some of your past decisions from previous games sometimes get referenced at some point. Although after the ending of the Inquisition DLC, the Trespasser, I'm kind of speculating that the fourth game is probably going to lead to like a hard reboot, maybe.
Probably.
And just sort of maybe just kind of cut away from all that continuity, having to keep track of, who did they pick to leave behind in the Fate or something.
Yeah, I mean, the ending of Dragon Age Inquisition is a world that's significantly changed. The politics, the power groups, and they're setting it up for making even more changes. Like the Dragon Age as we know it, or we thought we knew it in whatever version, it's over.
It's going to change, and it's if the next game isn't going to be this major overhaul to where it's pretty much going to reset I'm not expecting a hard reboot. It might lead to a soft reboot, which might eventually lead to a harder reboot. But I don't understand why with Mass Effect Andromeda, they should have just gone for maybe a harder reboot than they did.
Okay, I mean, it could have been very simple. Humanity came of age in the Milky Way. They knew these other races. There were conflicts, whatever. You don't have to mention the Reapers, something like that. You don't even have to mention Shepard. You couldn't mention the N7 program, right? It's like, that's a thing that humans have. It's like, oh,
It's
okay.
make it like a source of legend or
It's like,
something.
and then they just explore the Milky Way and then just go into a new galaxy, right? And instead of focusing on sort of trying to connect, like, no, this it's about themes, it's about ideas, it's about the feel, the look of it, right? Making something new that feels like it's like Star Trek. Now, Star Trek has done a couple of things, like they've gone back and forth, like they do one episode where they tie up to the rest to the past, and then it's like, okay, we're done. Let's do our own thing for the most part, right? Star Wars, the same things. Like when I was reading Star Wars Expanded Universe, it was like the problem was that it got tiresome because they were just kept rethreading and having using the same characters, and it's like, oh, there's just another war with another alien species, or the Empire's coming back, and we're like, okay, Leia's what 99.999 years old. I mean, even Carrie Fisher, God bless her heart, she's no longer with us. So it's like, because she just, I mean, and it could work. I mean, you see the new movies, I think they're going to be great, but you also have to be able to make some changes as well, right? And introduce new characters and sort of move on, right? Otherwise, it doesn't work. It's about keeping the themes and ideas and visuals and whatnot, but not necessarily sort of try to half-ass it. It was like, oh, it's kind of linked, but not really, but it is, but whatever, you can ignore that.
I mean, looking at all the party members of Andromeda, it's like you can tell, even though their personalities may not match up exactly, but you can tell, like, oh yeah, that Jal is clearly supposed to be some sort of Garrus analog, even though their personalities, backgrounds aren't the same. But it's like, oh yeah, that's Garrus. Oh, that's Rex. That's Miranda. That's Caden.
Yeah, and I think for the if we go if I think the only for Mass Effect, I think maybe go back. I mean, if you really are going to be tied to the original series in some ways, you just got to go back. But if you go back, and you would just have to take a hammer to the story and go like, listen, whatever we did before, it was great, but we're going to introduce a new version of Shepard or another character or something like that and do it in the Milky Way, or we're going to do an Andromeda and we're just going to forget about everything that happened in the past, right? So
yeah, or maybe even have like Mass Effect Chronicles, where it's just small sections of games that take place in different points of the history. Like, oh, here's Garrus like running around on Omega, building his team up, and
yeah,
his fall.
I think perhaps also the mistake, not a complete mistake. I mean, it's again gameplay wise, it looks fantastic, but maybe you don't always have to go. And this is what we talked about in the first podcast. You don't always have to go bigger. We have to be careful because you end up with Dragon Age 2, you go too small as well. But, you can, it gets the balancing act, right? If you go to side stories, if you explore different things, you can keep the franchise alive.
No, you know what I just kind of thought of? What if EA and BioWare gave or lend the Mass Effect franchise to Telltale Games? They make like a small episodic their style of games where it's just dialogue options and morality.
Well, okay, this was gonna, if anybody listens to this, they're gonna drive themselves nuts because I don't think that Telltale Games actually does games per se.
No, they're more of a kind of graphic novels,
novel, interactive narrative kind of thing, which is fine. I mean, people absolutely love the experience. You could do that. I mean,
it'd be kind of fitting with the dialogue system.
Yeah, I mean, and I think a lot of people really play it for the story, right?
They do.
Right?
I haven't picked up a Telltale game since Wolf Among Us and The Walking Dead season 2 because I wasn't too happy of what happened with those two games.
Yeah, but I think
I've seen them as of late. They've gone other IPs such as Minecraft, Borderlands,
Batman.
So Batman,
yeah,
that's a Warner Brothers one. So maybe,
yeah. I mean, or just there's I thought with this in the last episode. If they step back and go like, okay, let's think about what makes Mass Effect. Give it to a team that understands that. Give them the resources, but also give them strong guidance. Mass Effect doesn't have to die. If not, then well, we'll see what happens. So that's that's our very ambiguous take on the history of Mass Effect and what happened up to this point. I hope you enjoy the show. Of course, you can always follow me here on Lessons Learned 1 on Twitch. Chapel One, of course, is on YouTube as well as I am, also on the Lessons Learned, and he's under Chapel One. If you want any new subjects or ideas, you can drop by any of those channels and leave a comment or idea and concept, and we'll talk about them. So thank you for being here, Chapel One.
Well, thank you for having me.
And we'll see you next Friday. Good
All right.
night.
Good night.
And, ta-ta-ta.